Good morning or afternoon, whenever you're viewing this. Welcome back to Performing at Your Best YouTube channel. Congratulations on making it this far. I'm a great believer, as I said in the first video of the Video 100 series, that you have to have strong perspectives and principles in order to give strong and consistent performances. These principles and perspectives are the glue that keeps us together during the long times. The 7 principles of the psychology of performance that I covered in the previous videos are ones that should be viewed every once in a while. Do not wait until you go into a slump to go back to those videos. Beginning of every season, when you're feeling a little down or burned out, go back to 1 or 2 or all 7 of those principles. People tell me that each time they hear these principles, they gain some new insights into human performance, and more importantly, insights into themselves. What we're going to do for the remaining 4 or 5 videos in this 100 level series is start looking at you more personally. So today we're going to look at your personality, your playing or performing personality. The principles that we covered are important, but your personality are the filters that make sense and bring to reality these principles in your everyday rehearsals and practices, as well as the performances. This is about 15 years ago or so. I had a nice letter from a new PhD who wanted my input on a personality test he was putting together for athletes. And he sent me the personality test via the mail, and it was 15 pages long, full of neat stuff, fascinating angles on the human personality, and it had no relevance for most folks. It was just way too complicated. And that's what happens sometimes in sciences. We make things way too complicated to transform into everyday practices. I just want to share with you today 4 general dimensions of understanding your personality. The first one is physiological, the next 2 are psychological, and then the 4th one is tactical. These 4 put together will give you a better and hopefully a fresh insight into your playing and performing selves. Firstly, most of you have heard some of these, what's going on in our brain physically and physiologically. Excuse me. And those principles have said, do you look at, are you right eye dominant or are you left eye dominant? That's related to, are you right-handed or left-handed? Along with that, are you right-footed or left-footed? These neurological preferences set the communications open with our brain and have been going both ways. Firstly, do you tend to be right-handed or left-handed? It doesn't really matter as long as you're comfortable with that. There's a great percentage of young babies that are ambidextrous until they just either are forced to be right-handed or they feel more comfortable with that. Are you right-handed or left-handed? Good. Secondly, this sounds really strange, but are you right-footed or left-footed? For example, how do you kick a soccer ball? Do you kick it hopefully with your dominant, more powerful foot? And hopefully it is the same as your handedness, if you will. Easy way to check this out is just to think, do I kick a soccer ball with my left foot or my right foot? And then go back and confirm that and lay down on your back, and you will have both feet up in the air and see which one is straight up and which one is splayed out a little bit. The one that is straight up tends to be your balance foot, where the one that is splayed out tends to be your power foot. Does that make sense? Hopefully your handedness and footness are the same. Sometimes problems occur when you are left-handed and right-footed. There's a little scrambling in your brain. So when I'm working with one of those performers, they have to do a little more concentrating on input and retention. The next one, are you right eye dominant or are you left eye dominant? Assuming both eyes are healthy, then are you right-eyed or left eye dominant? Simple way, how do you, if you ever shot a rifle or a bow and arrow, which eye do you use? Down the arrow or down the muzzle of the gun? If you don't know that, follow this old example of putting your fingers in a triangle, putting your eyes right through that, and then closing and opening each eye. And the one that does not distort the picture is your eye dominance. Again, your eyes are the most direct connection of your brain, and we're finding out is really an extension of your brain. So if you understand which eye dominant you are, that will make you a lot more facile in learning new information and then turning that around. Hopefully that there is some symmetry between your eye dominance, your hand dominance, and your foot dominance. That I found is only fits for about 60-65% of the athletes and performing artists I've worked with. Problems occur when there is a scattering, right eye, left-handed, right footness. So we have to talk about that, just being aware of what sides of your body are dominant for different types of movements and actions are helpful in learning and retaining and then cueing in the actual performing. Here's our second personality level of determining who you are, what kind of performer you are. This goes back to the 1970s when there was a communications science developed by Virginia Satir and the researchers Bandler and Grindler. And they ended up coming up with the name of this new communication science called neuro-linguistic programming. NLP, it was called. This is before neuroscience, before there was a confluence between science physiologically, neurologically, and psychological science. But Virginia Satir and Bandler and Grindler started seeing that we seem to have a personality orientation that makes it easier for us to learn things, either what they call visually or auditorily, or kinesthetically, sensing, feeling, that we found out over the years, especially in English-speaking North America, 60% of us are visual, 20% of us are auditory, and 20% of us are kinesthetic. If you do not know which you are, listen to the words you use in your verbal language as well as your language to yourself. Visuals will say things like, picture this, or it's bright and it's clear. Imagine that. Auditories will say or think such concepts to me, to you as, it sounds like, it's ringing true. That sounds a little flat or sharp. It sounds off key. Kinesthetics will say such phrases as, my gut is telling me, I feel grounded, I feel centered. Those, once you become aware what you predominantly tend to be, and most of us, at least through the early parts of our lives, tend to be one of those three. Are you visual? Are you auditory? Or are you kinesthetic? One of the problems coaches and teachers of all kinds have had is they don't understand that 40% of the population are not visual by nature. They're auditory or kinesthetic. But most of the things they communicate or share in PowerPoints are visual. That only fits for 60% of the people. I had a wonderful high school golfer once I was working with for about 1.5 years, who really elevated his game so much. And he was a person who was just committed and passionate and landed a scholarship to a private Christian college in the Midwest. Unfortunately, his coaches and the remaining 8 people were all visual, where he was auditory. And all they were talking about in practices was imagining the flight of the golf ball. And he was listening to the whoosh of his swing. He was listening to the sound of the club face at impact. And it was like he was talking a different language to his coaches and other players. So much so that after taking long van rides across the state to other tournaments, all they would be talking about is visual parts of the golf shot, even looking at videos. And he lost his game. He said, well, I guess I should become more visual. That was not his essential nature. So at Christmas break, he came home to me and said, I must be stupid or an idiot because my game has gone downhill. After we talked about that for a while, I said, you have to learn how to honor yourself of being auditory. Either you're visual or auditory or kinesthetic by nature. As we'll talk about in a video, couple of videos from now on the neuropsychology of learning, emphasize your orientation, whether it's visual, auditory, kinesthetic. Find ways to have the input where you feel most comfortable with. Now, later on in our lives, depending on our experiences and our situations, we become, depending on the situation, more of picking and choosing. We become balanced. You don't have to necessarily be that. You can be auditory for your whole life. And with many of us, we become knowing when to be visual, when to be auditory, when to be kinesthetic. That's a nice balanced way of doing that. Learn what you tend to be. Thirdly, I was asked once just to break down in one concept of a performer or musician or actor's personality style. And it was very simple. You are either a thinker or you are a feeler. Thinkers are very methodical in what they do. Usually they're very self-disciplined in what they do. They are consistent. They take pride in their consistency. They're analytic. They're strategic. They take pride in having consistent performances. Here's another thing about the thinkers, is that when something goes wrong before a practice or performance or during a practice or performance, usually they can analyze it and fix it pretty quickly. On the other side of the spectrum, there are feelers. You know, these people who make their performances look so ungodly natural and even easy and fluid. And a lot of times when you ask a feeler what they do, they'll respond with, I don't know, I just go do it. Feelers can have great elevated performances that speak to the artistry, the majesty of what they're doing. And they have problems repeating those high-level performances. But during those performances, everything just flows, everything just connects. They are feeling, they are in the moment. Also, when the problems occur during a performance, feelers are less apt to know what to do. They just somehow mumble on. We tend to be either a thinker or a feeler. Guess what I am? By doing this whole series and all that writing, I am the prototypical thinker. And I take pride in consistent performances, being prepared, analyzing, being very strategic. I have some other colleagues who are just pure feelers. And when they indeed open up about it, they just don't know, nor should they know, nor should they even explore. Trusting your feelings, immersing yourself into it, and just doing it. Let feelers feel and allow thinkers to think. Are you either a thinker or a feeler? It doesn't matter which. Equally is valid, as long as you know what you tend to be and honor that. The fourth personality level is more strategic. What kind of errors do you make during a performance or practice? Basically, there are two types again. A dichotomy. There are errors due to tightness and errors due to looseness. Errors due to tightness is that you're so bound up with the pressure or the moment or trying too hard and trying to concentrate too deeply, and you make errors due to tightness. It's like you're allowing the moment to get to you and you push too hard, try too hard. And so you keep on working against yourself. On the other side, errors due to looseness are these, what I call no-brainer mistakes. Like, where was I when that happened? Or I should have paid more attention. And I said, those people would say, I didn't know there was an error happening until it just came upon me. Understand what type of errors you make in your performances and practices as well. The errors you make during your practices or rehearsals are little microcosms of the errors you tend to make when the pressure is on and sustained. Typically, thinkers make errors due to tightness. Does that make sense? They're analyzing too hard. They're trying too hard. They're dissecting things too much. And so they make errors due to tightness when it calls for a unified performance. Feelers tend to make errors due to looseness. I didn't know it was a mistake. I don't want to say that feelers are less intelligent. They're more intuitive than thinkers. Problems occur, again, when we're at cross circuits. Problems occur with thinkers when they make errors due to looseness. Something's going wrong in their concentration that they are not aware of. They're making no-brainer mistakes when they should be more in the moment and being more openly aware. Also, the other one is that sometimes feelers make errors due to tightness when they are unsure, when they're trying to answer to somebody else, trying to be somebody else, and they start going outside of their optimal performance areas. They start making errors due to tightness. Those are difficult situations when they're crossed to fix, and it takes more time. Typically, thinkers make errors due to tightness, and feelers make errors due to looseness. Now, these 4 assessments of different parts of your personality, which side dominant are you with eye, hands, and foot? That will help you a lot in learning activities and learning how to produce and perform some activities early on. You connect that with your neurological orientation. Are you visual? Are you auditory? Or are you kinesthetic? That will be your mechanism so you can start using your hands and eyes better. Putting with your general personality, are you tend to be a thinker or you tend to be a feeler? I don't care which you are, as long as you are aware of that and you honor that. With experience, with maturity in your performance area, there may be times when you do the opposite, when it requires to do the opposite. And that's one of the levels of mastery. And then fourthly, do you tend to make errors due to tightness or errors due to looseness? It makes sense. If you can start correcting your errors, you have a higher level of performing right off the bat. So be aware of your error patterns. These 4 will help give you a good overview of how you're approaching your art, your craft, your sport, your performance. Hopefully this makes sense, and go start kicking a soccer ball around. I shall see you next time. Thank you.